So now, as they say, or as I have said, as they say on Monty Python, it's time for something a little bit different. As I prepare to move to another location and to start a new house, I will be getting into the contractor mode, or the builder mode, or the home improvement guy. And so one of the things that I'm going to share with you today has to do with how to do home improvement. As it turns out, a co-inhabitant of mine had a blip in his in his conduct, and as a result, he expressed emotion in an unseemly way, which had to do with causing damage to the house. As you can see, there's a hole here, and this hole has an amazing resemblance to an anatomical part of a certain individual. Fortunately, he did not engage his spirit in a way that hit a 2x4 or a 2x6, or we would probably have been at the emergency room. But the upshot is, there's this little spot to fix in my hallway. And so, while this is not particularly a spiritual or political or analytical part of our lives, it is a very real part of my life. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is, the reason I'm filming this is that there is an alternative way to fixing breaks, not only the self-imposed kind of inhabitants, but others, where things bump into stuff, or things, sheetrock, wallboard gets broken. There's a way of doing it short of doing a 16-inch wide piece and linking it to a stud on one side or the other. In this case, the problem is that I have this wraparound molding, this wraparound forming of the sheetrock, which is the rounded nose for them, and of course the tin on it is buried in the sheetrock, and if I go any wider than the hole, much more than a ½ inch wider than the hole, I'm going to end up getting into the tin and tearing stuff up and having to undo that and having something a couple feet tall to fix. But I have a quicker fix, and the quicker fix works really well, and I have been doing this for more than 30 years, so I thought I would share it. So the first part of it is, and then I'll shut this down for a moment while I get set up, the first part of it is to mark out a spot. And you can do that with any kind of square. You can even do it with a piece of paper. You can take a piece of paper and mark out a square, if you can see how we do this. And just make sure you get all of the hole, or almost all of the hole. And the hole can be any size. Unlike the typical sheetrock fixing, where I would back up clear to a stud on one side or the other, and then attach this and tape it and put several coats of mud on the rest of that. I'm going to attempt to show you how I'm able to do this in a very simple and quick way and not make it any bigger or more extensive than it absolutely has to be. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. I'm going to use a typical sheetrock knife. This is similar to the box cutter knives that the Arabs did not use in taking over 9/11. Same kind of knife blade. And I am not going to hijack an airplane in the process of taking care of the hole in the wall. Neither am I from Saudi Arabia, who obviously masterminded the whole thing. And if you believe that, you probably ought to get off here entirely. But I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to cut it out not square, but in a tapered and beveled way, so that it actually has a surface that faces, a tapered surface that faces out, so that I can use the filler for it in a way that will have the maximum amount of space to hang on to. So let me do that. I'll cut it out, and then I will try to show you what I did and then what I'm going to do next to fix the plug that goes into it. Talk to you in a moment. So just to let you watch a little bit of this, I'm tapering my knife on the line or somewhere thereabouts and attempting to get this box cut out. You probably can't see it because my arm's in the way. Attempting to get this box cut out at an angle so that when I get it cut, it will all come out at an angle. As you can see here, I'm making a mess on the floor. Okay. Now you can see the stud that my friend did not hit, which is a good thing. And I could, in fact, screw this into space. But I'm not going to do that because I'm going to show you how to do it without using a stud. So I'm going to finish cutting this at a bevel. And I think that's as big as I need to make that hole. Let me focus in on the hole. Maybe you can get a little closer to it. As you can hear me dragging the camera along. There. Now you can see the hole. And you can see that I've tapered this all the way around. The idea of this is to get to, and normally speaking I would probably make this hole slightly bigger, but I'm going to show you how you don't have to make it bigger at all and give you a shot at how I fix it in the alternative way that I don't know anybody else uses. Okay, so for the first pass you can see that I have this hole tapered. I've actually expanded the taper a little bit and I have flattened and widened the outside of the taper, and I don't want anything sticking up. I don't want any rough edges sticking up. I want it all smoothed and down. And then I've roughed out this patch, okay? And the patch is roughly the size of it, and it's going to take a little bit of playing with it to get it the right size. But you can see that it fits inside of there. It's actually 1/4 of an inch or so smaller, both in height and width, than the hole itself, and it's going to be smaller yet as I taper it down. Alright, what I want to show you next is that I've taken this board, this is the face side of the board, this is the white side, and I have long tapered the back side. And I've made this as flat a taper as I can, so there's lots of surface this way. In other words, it's angled this way as opposed to like this. And I want it as angled as I can get it, and then I want it to fit inside the hole. You can see it basically fits inside the hole. It's just a touch too big. What I don't want this to do is to stick up. And right now, on the top at least, it sticks up just a touch. So I'm going to taper this just a little bit smaller so it fits into the hole. And then I'm going to reverse taper the back side so I have something to stick onto when I get to the outside. Okay, now I have tapered this on the inside face so that it's actually V-shaped. There's a taper this way on the outside and a long taper this way on the inside, all the way around the sheet. So now it fits inside the hole, and you can see it's kind of loosely fit. It's not a great fit. It could be a better fit. It could taper just a little slightly better. But you'll see it probably doesn't matter when I get ready to do this, because I'm going to use the mud to get it just right. But I want it tapered on both sides so that I actually have a V joint all the way around this that will use my mud. All right, next I'm going to make some mud, and then I'm going to show you how I fit this into the hole. How do you like my half face? That's pretty good, huh? All right, let me share with you the next step. What I use is a hot mud, and in my particular case, I use what's called Fix-All. You can buy this probably at any of the hardware stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, others, independents. But if they don't have the Fix-All brand, what you want is a hot mud. Normal joint compound mud dries, and it hardens and dries. It basically, the moisture in it evaporates and it eventually hardens, which of course makes it not very strong and also subject to wetness. So if it gets wet, it breaks back down. Hot mud, on the other hand, works like concrete. So once it is made wet, it begins to heat up a little bit, and it also hardens almost very quickly. I think this one will probably harden within a half hour and maybe faster, and that's one of the advantages I find of it, is that it hurries up and gets done. So let me show you how I do this for whatever it's worth. I've mixed up a batch of mud. I only made just a little bit. I made it fairly thick, fairly pasty, not quite library paste consistency, but fairly dense because I want it to fit on these tapered edges. I want it, all the tapered edges to fill up, and I want to overfill them. And it doesn't matter that I'm just a little bit messy, but what I want is a really good connection with the sheetrock, with the wallboard that's on the wall that I have. Now I'm going to ignore that I have a stud here, which would actually make it easier, because I can use that stud to screw the sheetrock in. But the whole object of this is to not have to have a board next to you. So in the middle of a panel, you can do this. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to butter the inside of this box, this replacement plug that I have that I'm going to put in. And I'm buttering all of the tapered edge on it on the inside so that it will stick. Okay? And I'm making it so that I get a really good connection on that inside taper. And then what I want to do is to just set this in here and set it so that it is flat. Oops. Alright, so it's already hardening and it's outrunning me. But it won't matter once I get it squared away. Alright. Now I just want this flush. I've got a little bit of paper sticking up here. I'm going to get rid of it. I just want this flush. And then I want to take, and you can see that I'm not getting the best connection, but I'm going to make it perfect by working the taper on all of these and working it into the taper of the crack. Now, in this particular case, if this were wallboard material or wallboard compound, I would say, you know, don't worry about it. You can sand it or scrape it off. But this stuff gets to be serious. So what I want to do while it is still wet is get an absolutely firm surface that does not stick up. And as you can see, I'm getting a surface now that is not sticking up. And I'm going to scrape it until I get it. I'm going to make a mess on the floor. I'm also going to wash this wall down so that I get all of this material off here, because the smaller I make this, the less I have to paint. But you can see now, I have completely enclosed that with nothing more than hot mud and a box. Okay? So that will show you where I am till now. I got to go sponge this off and get this cleaned up, and then I'll show you how I finish this. Okay, now I've washed this off, and as you can see, washing this off while it's still wet also smooths up my material, my filler material. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. And in the process of that, I have this very, very smooth, inwardly tapered spot that has hot mud on it and that will last for until it gets hit again, all right? Let me do the final part of this and show you how I finish this up. By the way, do not rinse this into your sink drain, your laundry tub drain, or whatever. Do not rinse this even into the toilet drain. Why is that? Because it's like concrete. And unlike wallboard mud, sheetrock mud, joint compound that melts and that will melt and wash down your drain into your septic system or into the city drain, this will not. This will form concrete, and it will begin to block the drain of your house. So this is not something that you want to leave to put into a toilet or a sink or a laundry tub. This is something that you want to completely rinse out and make sure that there's nothing that's there. And if you have globs of it, like I will have on my in my bucket, you have to dump that out in the garbage and let it dry, and it won't take long to dry. So pay attention to the fact that this is real hot mud, and it's just like mortar or concrete. You don't want it in the drain. So trick number one was that I use hot mud and tapered joints to feature this in here. And as long as this plug is even with the wall or even slightly lower, I'm good. And instead of taking hours and hours and hours to be fitted, screwed in, taped, allowed to dry, take a day or so to do it, it only takes a few minutes. I'm ready now for the second layer of mud. And for the second layer of mud, I'm going to use the all-purpose joint compound, but recognize that I'm not doing that straight up either. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. The first time I used this, I needed to fix a hole in a matter of minutes or hours as opposed to 3 or 4 days. So this is what I did, and it worked. It worked really well. It worked so well that I've done it dozens of times. So the second thing I did is took a glob of joint compound and put it in here, added a little bit of water, and then put a couple big heaping tablespoons of fix-all into it, which is going to cause this to firm up very, very quickly, and I can put regular joint compound over. Now it will stay damp because the joint compound still has to dry, but the fix-all will firm it up almost immediately and allow me to work it, put another layer over the top of it if I want to, and if it takes a day or two for the joint compound to dry, oh well, I don't care about it because I've got a firm joint and a finished surface that I can even texture if I want to over the top of. So what I've done then is about 1/3 fix-all and about 2/3 joint compound. And once I get this mixed up, I'm just going to put a little bit of it on here. You can see it's a little bit on the thin, pasty side. But it should fill perfectly, and it should fill in a matter of an hour or so, if not less. Now you can see that I've essentially made this joint disappear. If you use a high angle on this putty knife, you can get it pretty square. If you flatten it like this, it will concave. Put a little extra on, and then do it vertically, and let the knife itself work your surface for you. You can see I'm a little bit low there. There, all right? Now again, because this has got quick mud in it, I'm going to wash this down out around the outside. A little scratch there. But for all practical purposes, I'm done. And so I'll be doing texturing and painting it and done. And that has taken me maybe a half hour, and I'm all done with it. Whereas if I put tape over the top of it and fiddled with it, screwed it in, got it high or low, had the stuff chip and fall out on me, I end up with nothing but a weak joint compound joint with stupid tape on it that takes forever to dry and a couple days to fix. This took a half hour. So I hope that that helps. I will show you perhaps my textured and finish when I get done, just to prove that it actually does work. Thanks so much. I'll get back with you. Okay, let me show you. This is a half hour later, and I'm done. Now this, I noticed this is a touch low here, but I'll put a little mud on it and it'll completely hide. But this is hard to the touch and ready to go. And if I wanted to smooth that up, I could make a tiny bit more fix-all just to flush it out. but it's not going to take anything at all to hide this now with regular joint compound. Well, trust me that this is the spot right here where there was a hole and that it no longer exists. Let me adjust that slightly so you're dead on it. So the hole is right here and it is totally gone. It took me an extra day after putting the patch in. I put 2 coats of mud on it, joint compound, to completely smooth it up, touched those up a little bit, and then textured it yesterday afternoon, let it sit for a couple hours, and it had a couple coats of paint, so it's done. So what I'm trying to say is that's all it takes to get that done, and I really love fixing this and fixing it in a fast and easy way. It avoided the tape, it avoided all the mess around it, it avoided tapering it clear out. So the spot that I had to do was only this big as a result. So anyway, if that was helpful to you, again, I used Fix-All, I used a hot mud, and I used joint compound and basically cut it out. There are no screws or tape or anything else in here, it's just mud. And you can see it's absolutely solid, and I guess I don't want to punch it to see how it will break, but short of that I don't think it'll ever be a problem again. So that's my replacement, my quick tapered replacement of wallboard. If you like it, give a thumbs up and we'll go from there. I'll be doing more construction, building, etc. over the next few months.